Thank you very much. Thanks for joining the webinar, everybody. Uh, we're going to be talking about unleashing the power of threat intelligence with Microsoft Defender Threat Intelligence GitHub. I'm Michael Browning. I'm Senior Product Marketing Manager for MDTI. Alex Roland, Dennis Mercer, and Rakesh Kumar, all venerable wealths of knowledge on MDTI, will be joining us as well to talk about the technical elements of today's programming. So we're excited to announce the launch of our official GitHub community and really eager to share the solutions with you. First, we'll give an intro to MDTI for the uninitiated and explore the strategic, tactical, and operational intelligence available within. Then Alex and Dennis will dive into how to tap into the intelligence with technical solutions that the SOC can use for a really wide range of common incident response and threat hunting scenarios that really enhance your SIM and XDR programs. We'll then explore how to access the MDTI GitHub and run several custom scenarios that can enhance your security process through powerful enrichment and automation. This includes playbooks and workbooks, Postman collection, Jupyter notebooks, and Microsoft 365 Defender advanced hunting queries. Finally, we'll finish with how you can get started with MDTI and implementing the solutions that we cover in the webinar today, and then we'll close with a Q&A. So I think the best place to start is a high-level overview of Microsoft Threat Intelligence. Threat intelligence is one of the biggest areas of investment at Microsoft, and you can't remediate what you can't see. Microsoft Threat Intelligence is comprised of 65 trillion signals for an unimpeded view of attack vectors across the organization along the entire attack kill chain. So where does this unique visibility come from? It starts with firsthand telemetry and visibility from protecting some of the world's largest clouds. Add to that managing 1.5 billion endpoints, a continuously updated graph of the internet, which we'll get a bit into a bit more later. Incident response engagements from some of the world's largest governments and organizations. And all up, this equates to 72 billion threats blocked across clouds, gaming, identities, endpoints, Office, and email. It's important to mention this intelligence isn't just signal. It includes, human expertise, which again I'll get into a little bit more later. I think on the next slide. There's a really strong human element from more than 8,000 experts and researchers working on our intelligence that have a really wide variety of skill. And when that depth and breadth of intelligence meets that human expertise, really special things happen from a threat intelligence standpoint. So we take an interdisciplinary approach to threat intelligence. Our threat research teams comprise 8,000 experts across 77 countries with a really massive range of specialization. This includes threat actor research, reverse engineering, threat infrastructure research, endpoint threat research, ecosystem vulnerability research, incident response, geopolitics, linguistics, law, policy, social engineering. It goes on and on. Our team actively tracks 300 threat actor groups, including 160 nation states, and our research teams are fluent in dozens of key languages, which gives us a really broad view of the global threat landscape, but also lets us take that more targeted regional approach as well to get a really holistic view of threats. We also have a partner network of more than 15,000 across which we're continuously sharing and exchanging crucial information and intelligence. So that threat intelligence we just talked about is core to Microsoft security products, and it effectively integrates with our products and workflows. So, Microsoft is Intel-led across our security suite. So defenders can discover threats and enable deep investigations across exposures wherever they may be. Microsoft interoperability is really unique. No other company can say they have threat intelligence baked into each of its products that offer the visibility across such massive telemetry. So now that you have a little bit of a background in Microsoft TI, let's dive into MDTI, Microsoft Defender Threat Intelligence. So prior to the advent of MDTI, Microsoft was still known for its great threat intelligence, but it's baked into our products to power our leading SIM and XDR programs. MDTI is how Microsoft customers can actually, though, tap directly into this intel to leverage it, operationalize it, and deploy it. With MDTI, customers can directly access it in two ways. So the first is finished intelligence, which includes articles, intel profiles about actors and tooling, activity snapshots from those 8,000 experts informed by those 65 trillion signals we talked about. And these also include updated tools, tactics, and procedures, or TTPs, recommendations about how to manage threats, and then targeting information and associated indicators of compromise, or IOCs, tied to those groups and campaigns. The next is raw intelligence. MDTI's raw intelligence is created by mapping threat infrastructure across the internet every day to locate relationships to known malicious infrastructure, tooling, and backdoors, all at a really incredible scale. It gives customers the same raw signal that Microsoft systems and researchers analyze, as well as researchers from other organizations, quite frankly, to see threat infrastructure across the world and understand the full extent of a threat, more than just what's on your network. And this includes how attackers are modifying their techniques in the wild, which is really important. Customers can query these threat infrastructure relationships directly or at scale via the API, which we'll get into more later, to kind of instantly know everything they need to know about a piece of threat tooling. Is it malicious? Is it tied to known threat groups, attacks, or tooling? And what other infrastructure in general is it tied to? Build this one out. So MDTI's raw intelligence is unique because it's created from a vast global collection network. That's really one of a kind. This network is made up of virtual users collecting advanced reconnaissance by acting like real users online. So, within their browser, these virtual users will go into websites behaving like a real user, grab information, and bring it back for analysis, all at a massive scale. We also have a global sensor network that captures massive amounts of DNS data. So this reconnaissance, analysis, and automation combines with machine learning to turn into raw and finished intelligence that informs and creates essentially a gridded map of the external threat landscape that you can use to track and pinpoint threats. All of that information gets published to the cloud, helping create our unique derived data sets like host pairs that analysts can use to build organization-specific intelligence. It also continuously enhances our library of finished intelligence, including those profiles on actors, tooling, and vulnerabilities. Build this one out as well. So I mentioned host pairs, but host pairs is just one example of how intelligence and MDTI enables security teams to, track and understand how threat actors may be targeting their specific organization through a technique called infrastructure chaining, starting with a single malicious indicator, like a piece of malware. Using MDTI data sets, this enables you to connect the threat infrastructure so that you can see what your adversary looks like online. This is powerful because, as an attacker interacts with the internet to launch their campaign, they leave behind clues as to who they are, and they really can't help it. So our virtual users are collecting these signals to correlate them to help us forensically trace those threat actors. An example of this is, take a previously unknown attack with a weaponized email containing malware. First, the email itself contains a lot of metadata and clues, like the sender's domain and links in the message. We can see that the malware from the email is calling out to a command and control server with an IP address, which in turn has an SSL certificate on it. The cert is associated with an additional IP address, some of which point to domains. So, now with this information, we know that even though the domains seem disparate and they never touched our network, they're actually part of the same attack. So we can take action against those domains preemptively. With MDTI, you're able to map threat actors' actions with their signal to take measures to inoculate your organization against certain threats. So how does this all come together? Microsoft is unique in bringing the best of SIEM and the best of XDR together into a single comprehensive integrated platform. So this provides incredible protection for multi-platform, multi-cloud devices. MDTI enhances these capabilities in Microsoft Sentinel and Microsoft 365 Defender by providing crucial context about threat actors, campaigns, and infrastructure. And, as we talked about, that external outside of the firewall telemetry to give you a complete view of a threat beyond just what's on your network. This is done with several powerful automated solutions involving 3 systems working together to automate the alerting, hunting, and intelligence gathering process. First, you have Microsoft 365 Defender. Example of that, endpoint alerts and hunting using TI data from MDTI provides more context about devices, connecting to, for example, potentially malicious IPs. Then you have Microsoft Sentinel. Users can visualize TI data using MDTI workbooks, for example. They can automate incident response efforts such as triage using playbooks, and we'll get into a little bit more about that soon. And then MDTI standalone. Users can hunt against passive DNS and other MDTI data sets to identify related indicators of compromise, mapping an actor's infrastructure to get closer to that threat actor attribution. So kind of what does this look like today? At Microsoft Secure in the spring, we launched several ways that Microsoft customers can operationalize MDTI. First, you have the MDTI data connector, which is where Microsoft researchers will continually add all publicly available IOCs, from MDTI Finish Intelligence to the Microsoft Sentinel TI Blade. Sentinel users can access these IOCs, which are really valuable for driving analytics, hunting, and investigation. We also launched the MDTI Analytics rule in Sentinel. This is a built-in rule that you can easily enable that takes URLs, domains, and IPs from a customer environment via log data and checks them against known bad IOCs from MDTI. And when there's a match, an incident is automatically created and the data is written to the Microsoft Sentinel TI Blade. So by enabling this rule, Microsoft Sentinel users know they have detections in place for threats known to Microsoft. We also introduced the MDTI API at Secure, and this went GA on July 1st. This enables licensed users to query Microsoft Threat Intelligence at scale via any SIM, including Microsoft Sentinel, of course. If you came to our booth at Black Hat or RSA, we were probably showcasing enrichment playbooks, which enrich incidents with everything MDTI knows about a threat, like the reputation score that helps triage the incident. But now with the introduction of our API endpoints, we've enhanced our solutions offerings, and we'll highlight those today. But we have additional playbooks, notebooks, workbooks, and Microsoft 365 Defender hunting queries that Dennis and Alex will touch on. So thanks for letting me intro this stuff. Before I hand it over to Dennis and Alex, we ask that you take a minute to fill out this one question survey. This gives us an idea of what you're most interested in out of the solutions that we'll cover today, so that we can build more content that's most relevant to our audience. And we'll pause to let everybody scan the QR code or visit, and then I'll pass it over to Dennis here, who will introduce the MDTI GitHub and show you some of these awesome demos. And then we'll show this again at the end. So if you don't get to it now, you can scan this later at the end. But thanks, everybody.
You ready for me to take over, Michael?
Yep, go ahead, Dennis.
Okay, if I can get a quick thumbs up that you see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. And away we go. So today I'm going to talk about the Sentinel playbooks, workbooks, and the Postman collection. So let me advance the slide here. When you first go to the GitHub, if you search for the MDTI solutions in the GitHub, this is a screenshot of that. I'll show you a little bit later on my own computer, the GitHub itself, but this is where you would go to look for the MDTI solutions. Just search for MDTI attack solutions. You can also look for MDTI playbooks within the Sentinel repository. So for the MDTI Sentinel playbooks, what do you need? What you really need to do to start off with is go to our blog area, and there's a blog out there about enabling Sentinel playbooks. There's a couple different ways that you can enable those. We're going to go over how to do that from the GitHub repository. So before you start, you need an MDTI premium license. There's a link to that in the article, and we'll shoot that out later on, as well as the MDTI API license. You're going to need that license to configure the playbooks. You also, on your Microsoft Sentinel instance, you need to be a user with at least the contributor role or have a tenant admin assist you with this. Is because when you set up the client IP, or excuse me, the client app, when you do the registration, you're going to have to get the client ID and the client secret, along with your tenant ID, to set up those three variables that allow you to access the API endpoints. So on the right-hand side of the screen, again, you're going to go in, you're going to create this app, you're going to register it with the permissions for the API. You're going to gain, again, the client ID, the client secret, and you have to have your tenant ID. And then you're going to install the the Defender TI Sentinel playbook, configure it with your credentials, and then use that playbook within Sentinel to run. This is a quick screenshot of the GitHub repository when you're looking at the playbooks themselves. And we've highlighted, or I've highlighted a portion down here about how to deploy to Azure from the GitHub. There's a couple different ways, but this is how we're talking about it today. MDTI workbooks. Like playbooks, workbooks do pull from the API, but they provide analysts and SOC managers with an interactive view and reports of Sentinel data. They allow you to have a quick representation or visual representation of data that is valuable to SOC managers at a quick view and other analysts. So just like API, or excuse me, the Sentinel playbooks, the workbooks, you're going to have that premium license. You're going to have that API license. You're going to have the same Sentinel instance and the client ID, client secret, and tenant ID. That's going to be able to configure the app, just like we did with the playbooks. And here's a quick screenshot of the GitHub repository for the workbooks. Sean Wasanga has built out a couple of really powerful workbooks here, one revolving around typo squatting. So please go there, take a look at those. Postman collection. Again, you're still going to have that premium license, the API license, and that client app set up with all the information that you're going to have to put into Postman to access the API. So let's go over and take a look at some demos here. First, I'm showing you the Azure MDTI solution. Again, playbooks. If you drop down in here to playbooks, you can start to look at, in this case, typo squatting or any of these other type of playbooks, and then you would be able to deploy to Azure. Now, one thing I do want to go over before we do a deployment is here is that blog article that I was talking about. It's in our blog area on the tech community. It'll talk about signing up for a premium license, the API license. These are the two links right here. Alex is going to show some linkings to that later on in her presentation. But once you're here and you deploy to Azure, so not for brevity and time's sake, I've already started the deployment, or excuse me, I want to show the app registration. Here's where you do the app registration. You just click on a new registration, you name it, but you need to have that contributor role or that admin role assigned to you before you do deploy that tenant or register that app. So again, we're going to go back into the MDTI GitHub. You would deploy to Azure by clicking on this link, and I've already done that, and come over here and start to fill out the information that you would need to enable that playbook. You have to have the resource group, the region, and then you just hit create and review and create, and that would go through all the checks. But for brevity and time's sake, it's going to take a few minutes. So I've already deployed that. This is in a demo environment. So in this case here, we have an incident. So if we go to these incidents right here, you're able to come over and look at the full details of this incident. And this is kind of why I ran it earlier, was for brevity and time's sake. So we have this incident here. The incident actions, you would just run this playbook. Now I've already run the playbook here on this incident, and it's provided me, or what it's done is it's queried the API reputation endpoint and has brought back that data and updated the comments. So what we're seeing from this entity here, this IP address, we're getting back a reputation score is classified as malicious with a score of 100. And it's going to give you some reasons why this IP address has been associated with Cobalt Strike. It could be a command and control server. It could be any number of different infrastructure related to Cobalt Strike that we've detected in the past. And we're seeing some linkage to Silk Typhoon. Typhoon would be a Chinese-based threat group. So the different namings that we have that we've come out with in the past, they're all named after storms. In this case here, it's the Silk Typhoon, folks. You would be able to click on this link right here and drop into the Intel profile for MDTI, kind of what Michael was talking about, some of the things that we've launched. But what it's done is this playbook is enriched this this incident with a reputation score. Now, I have seen other organizations who have built very, very large logic apps built on for playbooks that will query all the backend or all the endpoints within MDTI. And then based on the type of event, a phishing event, they might look at host pairs. They might look at components for maybe looking for Cobalt Strike type of components. So they have a very large playbook that pulls back all these endpoints, and then based on the event, we'll do other additional polls or other additional queries to the API backend based on the swim lane of that event. It's all entirely upon yourself. We're giving you the base playbooks, and Alex is going to show you later on here with the base notebooks. We're giving you these base notebooks. We want you to take them and make them your own. You can still use them if you don't have a very good understanding of logic apps. You can still use those as is, as we've presented them to you, and you can modify them. Now, real quick, I'm going to switch over to Postman. Postman here, you're going to be able to come in, grab that information that you need. You're going to have to download the Postman application, but you're going to be able to put in the client ID, the client secret, and the tenant ID. These may be in a different order for you, but you would put that information in here. I'm going to go back up here at the top, and of course, I'm not going to expose my client secret or any of that type of information on this form here. But once you have that reputation for a host, what I did is I went in there and pulled digitalwell.info and ran a query, and this is what was returned. It's going to come back in JSON format. It's going to provide you with the information that you need. You can start to parse this information however you want. In this case here, we come back with a classification of malicious with a score of 100, and it tells you the rules that fire, just like what we saw on the Sentinel playbook or the comments that were updated in the Sentinel instance. You're going to get the rules that fired. And in this case here, we have an actual link to an article in MDTI. So if you were running this playbook and your analyst wanted to get more information, they can actually click on that link. And once they do that, you would come up into the Microsoft TI Defender portal, or you can actually come into the M365 Defender portal and start to review the article. In this case here, that's the article that I just clicked on for Mint Sandstorm, Sandstorm being out of Iran. With that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Alex.
Thanks so much, Dennis. One moment and I will share my screen. Okay. All right, so before I dive in and demonstrate some of the notebooks that we've published, I just wanted to give a very rudimentary overview of what notebooks are for those of you that might not be familiar. So at a very high level, notebooks allow users to coalesce data, code, prose, to basically be able to go and tell an interactive computational story. The net of all of this as it pertains to MDTI is it's going to help analysts automate and scale their investigative efforts as well as their TI protocols. So what you're actually seeing on the right-hand side are all the different notebooks that we've published thus far in our GitHub repo. And then on the bottom left pane, you'll see various types of IDEs that you can leverage notebooks with. What I'll show is Jupyter notebooks today, but all of them would function the same. And certainly there's more IDEs out there, but these are a few of the ones that I've leveraged myself. All right, so notebook benefits. Again, I'm not going to go through each one of these, but at a very, very high level, what notebooks really help with is the ability to coalesce data from a variety of different sources. So for example, if you're in our standalone MDTI portal or leveraging our features within M365 Defender, you're pigeonholed to the feature functionality that exists there, but being able to leverage our APIs, you can, for example, if you wanted to have more enrichment across other passive DNS sources, looking at our data and others in one single pane of glass, notebooks are super helpful for that. You can also execute your code in a sequence. So if there's certain code that needs to run before other code works properly, you can have them in different steps. So it's just easier to kind of go through and execute your workflows that way than having to go and call separate scripts from the command line. So whatever your preference is, it's just a really great IDE for that perspective. You can also leverage different types of packages out there to actually visualize our data. So there's a lot of advantages. Again, I'm not going to go through each one of these, but those are some of the main ones I wanted to highlight. So just some musts before you actually dive in and use our notebooks. Be sure to read the READMEs for each respective one. They're going to have a variety of different information out there to make sure that you can successfully run them. So anything from prerequisites, setup, configuration, usage results, they'll have any disclaimers in there, and then additional resources that you can leverage that might aid in your use or further development of the notebook. And then as you're going through and needing to troubleshoot notebooks in the future, let's say there's a notebook that you downloaded 6 months ago and now it's not running properly, you can go in, one, see if we've made any changes, but then also at a higher level, check to see if there's been any new releases with our GitHub repo, as well as any new packages that you want to check out. So this first notebook I wanted to highlight just basically goes through and you're able to enrich a domain or an IP, similar to what you saw with Dennis's presentation within Postman. This one specifically, and give me a moment here, I can go back and pause. This one specifically, at the beginning here, it just allows you to go through and import any required packages, set your client secret variable so that you guys can't see it here in the presentation. This first step is actually querying the ID of an article to return all the information that you see here in the UI. So those IDs are part of the URL path like you just saw. And then it spits back again all the same data that you're able to grab in the user interface. So as Dennis mentioned, right now, you can certainly build off of these. So if you wanted to create a for loop, something we'd like to do in the future to actually enhance this. So if you beat us to it and want to contribute to our GitHub repo with any additions, you're more than welcome to. But that would allow for like bulk enrichment. So if you wanted to reference, for example, a text file that had a bunch of different actor names in this example to spit back all the related articles or Intel profiles, that would be a good way to just go ahead and like automate your workflows than have to manually search them in the UI one by one by one. All right, so let's go ahead to the next demo. We've got our components notebook. I know Michael had highlighted some of the different data sets earlier in the presentation. Components are basically just all the infrastructure that is associated with an IP or domain. We're able to grab our components from our virtual user crawls as well as from our port scans. So we build out different detections to look for different things. So you see Cobalt Strike being highlighted. We've got different detection rules to pick up on that from our port scans. So it's just basically, what are these actors using when it comes to executing their campaigns. And then we also have our cookies notebook. Again, for each of these, you can go through and basically declare a specific IP or domain name, and that information will return in terms of, in this case, all of the different cookies associated with riskiq.com. just from a high level, cookies are really helpful when it comes to phishing investigations, because you can see if, let's say, a cookie that originates from your own company's domain server is observed against a foreign host, that would be indicative of maybe an actor that went out and that's something unique to you. That would be indicative of an actor going out and scraping your source code, looking to impersonate you, inheriting those cookie values. What you just saw earlier was me modifying the top operator. So in all of these, I believe in all the different data sets, it'll return just as many results as there are in the user interface. So if you want to declare more or less coming back in your response in terms of the amount of infrastructure observed, you can add in that top operator and set whatever amount you want to return back. So I just wanted to make sure that I highlighted there so you all could see that. And then we also have our host pairs notebook. Host pairs, similar to cookies, are very helpful when it comes to phishing investigations, especially. You can see if there's, let's say, a host that's referencing assets that should just be unique to a particular organization. Maybe there's a foreign host referencing images, CSS, style sheets, links, that would be indicative of them going again and scraping that organization's source code that they're looking to impersonate, where they've inherited those assets, and we were able to see that relationship observed when it comes to our virtual user crawls. So those are all different signals that you can pick up when it comes to phishing investigations. So again, in this example here, we're able to see the host pairs relationships, the parent, the child hosts return as a result of, specifically, we looked at our riskiq.com domain. Here we have our reputation notebook. Again, in this example, we're just going to go ahead and enrich riskiq.com. It's not a malicious domain, so we're not going to see bad reputation there, but you could certainly take different related IOCs that you're investigating to see some high-level information to assess if those IOCs are good, bad, or otherwise, specifically looking at domains, hosts, or IP addresses. And then we have our SSL certificates notebook. So again, this will just pull back all the certificates associated with riskiq.com, specifically the most recent 10, since we've got that top operator in here. So it's just going to take a minute to think, and then the response comes back. All right, and now we have our trackers notebook. Trackers is also one of those data sets that's really helpful when it comes to phishing investigations. Trackers could be anything from unique ways that we've detected, for example, JARM hashes from profiling C2 servers when we do our port scans, or it could be SEO IDs, social media IDs. But it helps if an organization can come in and take a look at their own trackers and see if there's foreign hosts that have inherited those tracker values that should be unique to their infrastructure. So for example, if you were to search up your own domain and then look at the trackers tab, you could pivot off of any active IDs that you guys own. So it could be again, like a Google Analytics ID, for example, and then see if there's any foreign infrastructure that has inherited those to try to do some proactive investigations, phishing investigations against your brand. All right, so that's what I had to show in terms of demonstration of our of our various notebooks. I just wanted to highlight the call to action when it comes to using our GitHub repo. We would love it if you could start or watch our MDTI Solutions GitHub repo, and then submit any pull requests if you'd like to contribute to our repository. So there's details in the contributing section in terms of how you can get that set up. You will need to do a license agreement. So there's more details there that you can certainly check out. And then if you want to learn more about our GitHub repository, or working with our APIs in general, there's a few different AKA links that you can check out. So /MDTI API, the API practical guide video. So Sean Wasonga does a really good job of just going over how to leverage our API, and some of the different solutions that we've published as well. And then links to our blogs for other information on MDTI. I do realize we do have time. I didn't go over the M365 advanced hunting query, so give me one moment here. I'm gonna go ahead and demonstrate that. So one moment. All right, so within our GitHub repo, you'll find a variety of different M365 advanced hunting queries. So each of these obviously serves a different purpose. The one that I'm going to pick on today is our DTI email-based events. So when you open that up, here's all the different code that you would use to execute that. And it'll basically look for whenever you come in and enter the host as well as your SaaS URL token. I'll drop this in the chat shortly. If you're not familiar how to create a SaaS token within Azure, this article does a really good job of walking you through that, and all the credentials that you would need. And so then in M365 Defender, you just need to go to the advanced hunting section. Then you can put that code in, and then the specific type of IOC that you're looking to investigate, to see if there's any, or sorry, not IOC, but CSV file that you would have uploaded to your blob SaaS storage container, to look for any of those IOCs included in that CSV file if there's been any associations with your logs specific to these types of events. So you can go and declare like your time frame, of course, how far back you want to look for that. And then it will go back and do that hunt once you go and run the query. So I just wanted to quickly walk you through that. But again, that's everything that I wanted to present on. So I think what we'll do at this point is take some time for Q&A. I know, Michael, you shared that you were gonna post that question, I believe, again for folks.
I'll share the.
Okay.
Yep, I'll share the poll question right now, just so folks have a chance to scan the QR code if they didn't before.
Okay, thank you.
I also want to mention that we have a event coming up, Microsoft Ignite, from November 14th through 17th. We're going to be talking about a lot of really cool new innovations and features that we'll be launching. So we invite you to register for that and check it out. I think Valon has the link that he can share.
Yep, the link is already published, as well as the link to the form, so we're all good in that regards. And also the team has been taking care of the questions here. There's 2 more questions that we might want to maybe verbalize. And thanks, Alexa, for covering the advanced hunting part, which was, I think, the extra material. And so just let me know when we want to cover the Q&A part.
I'm comfortable whenever, unless Michael, you
Yeah.
want to wait a little longer.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
I see that Rakesh is already replying to this, but maybe we can just verbalize on this. There's somebody's asking on the threat intel in M365 Defender, and he was wondering that that M365D and MDTI are the same. So perhaps maybe someone from you can elaborate on that difference.
So the portals, they're obviously different portals. Information that's feeding them is the same. So hang on just a second here, if I can get this to come up.
Trying to share something, Dennis?
I'm logging in right now, so I don't want to share
see.
that part.
No worries.
It just taking the demo gods. It's kind
Yeah,
of
yeah.
flipping between screens because it just kind of runs so slow.
One thing that I could mention, if it's helpful, around Microsoft Secure as well, we launched the integration of MDTI into Microsoft 365 Defender. So licensed users would see the threat intelligence blade available to them, wherein MDTI was available. They would see the Intel Explorer tab and the Intel Profile tab, and that is beyond what is baked into the products already. So that was a kind of wealth of additional intelligence that, as I mentioned, made this kind of Microsoft intelligence available to customers directly. So that might be part of the answer there, and then Dennis can cover the rest.
So
Thank you, Mike.
can you see my screen now? Couldn't share.
Not yet.
All right.
Yeah, we can see it now.
Okay, so the difference is here's the TI.Defender portal. And if I go to the home page, it's going to have the same kind of data that you would see in the M365, and I'll show that here in a second. Your search bar, your featured articles. If you were to look at a entity to do a query on an entity, the data would show here. The data would be presented in this fashion, in this vertical fashion. But if you were over in threat intelligence, in the Intel Explorer, again, see how it looks similar. They're just in different portals. The data that's populating these is the same. So,
Well, thank you.
in this case
for
here,
this.
it's horizontal.
Appreciate the clarification, Dennis. This is pretty much all the questions we got, as the rest has been taken care of from the team here. And if you don't mind just sharing the there you go. That's exactly what I was. Oops. So if no one else has anything else to add or to elaborate on, then we can just wrap this up. And I would like to thank you again, Mike, Alexandra, Dennis, and Rakesh for being our guests today, and for sharing this great information with our community. So thank you for that. And to all listeners out there in the line, if you're someone who wishes to aid in protection of the world from cyber threats and desire to have a say in shaping our strategies, blueprints, and recommendations, then we invite you to become part of our security community, because together we can make a global impact. So please join us at aka.ms/security community. This is also where you'll be notified about our upcoming webinars, events, and other announcements. Also, please take a minute to submitting your webinar feedback at aka.ms/security webinar feedback. And for those of you who may have additional questions on the topic that we just covered or other product related questions, please feel free to raise them on our Microsoft Tech Community discussion space at aka.ms/Microsoft Defender TI community. So thank you all for being part of our community and for joining us on these webinars. We hope to see you next time. Goodbye.